With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories.
Device distribution rolled out in Nevis to complement upcoming launch of digital literacy program.
Police investigating shooting of Calvin Prentice.
Electric vehicle policy for St. Kitts and Nevis begins to take shape.
St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister defends sale of Christophe Harbour Marina to Safe Harbour Marinas, setting sights on Caribbean yachting supremacy. Police investigate 2 separate robberies at Chinese supermarkets. Senior police officer among 4 Guyanese sanctioned by U.S. World Environment Day observed with a cleanup campaign in Grenada. Internationally, Donald Trump has no plans to talk to Elon Musk, White House says. Now, the details.
The Nevis Island Administration, through the Ministry and Department of Education Nevis, has begun to position the island for a long-awaited digital literacy program. After a long halt in device distribution to students and teachers across the island, more than 1,200 electronic devices, including laptops and tablets, were distributed to students in primary and lower secondary schools. The devices were distributed on Literacy Day, Wednesday, May 21, 2025. Other activities of the day included digital literacy-centered classes, digital literacy awareness, and special assemblies. Literacy Day formed part of STEM Week 2025 in Nevis. The Department of Education advised that more than 350 devices were allocated to primary schools to enhance the classroom learning, with an expected 200 more devices for distribution to upper secondary students and 300 more being prepared for teachers. In a groundbreaking move, preschools were also considered, with almost 100 devices being prepared for childhood centers across the island. Nevis is advancing its academic curriculum to transition away from information technology to digital literacy. Education officials have begun working on a digital literacy plan and working in tandem with the Department of Education St. Kitts to develop a curriculum to ensure that the students receive the best instruction. Meanwhile, curriculum updates and professional development for teachers in partnership with Macmillan Publishing and Digital Schoolhouse are underway. Mr. John Williams, Education Officer responsible for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM education within the Department of Education Nevis, said it is important for students to navigate through the changing digital landscape, understanding who they are as digital citizens, and ensuring the safe and effective use of technology. Ideas like programming, robotics, and artificial intelligence are being considered for the program.
The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force is investigating a shooting incident that occurred on the night of June 5th, 2025 in Churchground, Nevis. The incident occurred around 8 p.m. Preliminary investigations indicate that Calvin Prentice was entering his residence when he was approached by a lone armed assailant who discharged a firearm in his direction. Prentice sustained a single gunshot wound to his left shoulder and was subsequently transported to the Alexandra Hospital for medical treatment. Prentice is warded at the hospital in stable condition. The authorities are appealing to anyone with information to come forward and assist.
Electric vehicles are more likely to become a mainstay in St. Kitts and Nevis when major infrastructural changes take place, including multiple charging stations. Importantly, plans have already begun to take shape, beginning with an electric vehicle EV policy that is underway in the Federation. Speaking at a press conference organized by Energy Minister Conris Maynard on June 5, Dr. Bertil Brown, Director of the Energy Unit, gave a synopsis of what the electric vehicle policy entails. Other than the need for charging stations, incentives to offset the upfront cost of electric vehicles and improvements to the Federation's electricity grid were also factored in.
WINN is an electric vehicle policy, and that policy would outline the government vision with respect to the adoption of electric vehicles in the Federation. It also outlined the strategy by which the government intend to achieve this vision, and a number of initiatives that the government would take to further this vision. For example, one is incentives on electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, the upfront cost is much higher than the internal combustion vehicles that we drive, but the maintenance is much less. And over the life of the vehicle, it's less expensive. But still, most people will struggle for the upfront cost. And so we are looking at ways to reduce that upfront cost. And the other actions that we plan to take with respect to things, for example, we want to know how many charging infrastructure that they want, where we should put them, what would be the cost, how they would be financed. For electric vehicle, we want to know what Skelec has to do to upgrade their grid to accommodate electric vehicle. All of those consultancies will have to be done.
One of the government's agenda points is to ensure a greener, cleaner environment. Adopting electric vehicles into the island's transportation system can help to achieve that agenda. Electric vehicles do not produce tailpipe emissions, thus reducing air pollution and controlling planet-warming greenhouse gases. Leading from the front, Maynard, the energy minister, owns an electric vehicle. In January 2025, he was invited to bring his electric vehicle to an EV and hybrid training course facilitated by the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. The training held on January 16 included several local trainees and 3 others from Anguilla. They received a full view and explanation of the vehicle through the facilitator, Andy Latham of Intac Limited in the United Kingdom. Minister Maynard remains adamant on ensuring that the Federation is not left behind in the EV transition. He believes it is feasible and possible.
The government of St. Kitts and Nevis has confirmed the sale of the marina assets and operations at Christophe Harbour to Safe Harbour Marinas LLC, a global leader in marina management, making a pivotal development in the nation's tourism and marine infrastructure sectors. During the June 3, 2025 edition of the Roundtable, Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew vigorously defended the sale amidst growing scrutiny. He characterized the transaction as a decisive move, positioning St. Kitts and Nevis among the Caribbean's premier yachting destinations, highlighting Safe Harbour Marina's global standing. Prime Minister Drew noted,
Safe Harbour Marinas is a well-established company. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, marina operator in the world, with over 135 marinas that are home to more than 40,000 members' boats. This deal is going to make St. Kitts and Nevis, we're going up into the premier of harbours around the world.
The Prime Minister detailed the anticipated economic benefits, emphasizing job creation across various sectors.
Our yachting sector will become a thriving sector, producing jobs upon jobs in all areas. This is an excellent company coming to St. Kitts and Nevis, one of the best in class.
Moreover, he underscored the strategic advantage of Safe Harbour Marina's existing Caribbean network, stating that with partnerships in Puerto Rico and other key locations, their combined capacity now exceeds 1,000 slips across the region, a network that will connect St. Kitts to an extensive clientele and drastically increase marina utilization during the forthcoming yachting season starting in November. Prime Minister Drew also announced immediate and sizable investments from Safe Harbour Marinas to expand Christophe Harbour's marina capacity, expected to be operational by November 2025. Importantly, this expansion includes the installation of a desalination plant to provide a 24/7 fresh water supply, alleviating concerns over local water resource strain.
Safe Harbour is immediately investing in St. Kitts to expand the marina capacity. This expansion will be operational beginning in November 2025. That's how quickly they're moving. In addition to expanding the marina capacity, Safe Harbour will add desalination plant to make sure that there's 24/7 water, and this will supply all of their fresh water that they need. And this is expected to be completed in November 2025. So they will not be straining our water resource here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Integral to the agreement is the commitment to employ local talent, with the marina led and operated by Kittian staff, a step that underscores community involvement and skills development. The expanded facility will host 32 super yachts, vessels typically 60 meters long and crewed by teams of 15 or more, with the capability of support for over 600 visitors at full capacity. Prime Minister Drew highlighted the distinction this brings to the national tourism portfolio.
This has nothing to do with our cruise product. This is in addition to our cruise product. We are going into a next level of when it comes to our tourism product. By having capacity to service super yachts from around the world. We're in a different club.
The arrival of such large yachts and their crews is expected to have a ripple effect across the local economy, requiring a broad range of hospitality, provisioning, maintenance, and technical support services.
These large yachts and their crews will require significant levels of support for hospitality, provisioning, maintenance, technical support, all sorts of things. Safe Harbor looks forward to working with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to develop the capabilities required to support the growth of the yachting industry within St. Kitts.
The Prime Minister succinctly captured the government's vision.
So we have a cruise industry, and we are launching once and for all our yachting industry to be second to none in this region. And this will start in November as well.
Contrasting the government's optimistic look, leader of the People's Labour Party, the Honourable Dr. Timothy Harris, has raised critical questions regarding the transparency of the sale and has reminded the public of the originally promised $17 billion investment by Christophe Harbour developers. His statements signal an ongoing political debate about these sales' long-term impacts and management. As the Federation awaits the tangible outcomes from the sale, the government's explicit goal to establish Christophe Harbour as a Caribbean yachting hub reflects a strategic shift toward diversifying and elevating St. Kitts and Nevis's tourism offering. With Safe Harbor Marina's vast international experience and immediate investment plans, the potential for significant growth in yachting-related activities appears promising, setting the stage for a new era in the nation's tourism and maritime sectors. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force is intensifying investigations into two armed robberies that took place on consecutive days at Chinese supermarkets in St. Kitts. The incidents have raised concerns about the security of retail businesses and public safety in the community. On June 4, 2025, at approximately 2:30 p.m., an unknown male entered the Panda Chinese supermarket located on Upper Market Street, Basse-Terre. The suspect was described as wearing a baby blue t-shirt, dark jeans, and a black helmet. According to police reports, the man brandished what appeared to be a firearm and demanded money from the cashier. He successfully stole an undisclosed amount of cash before fleeing the scene on foot, carrying a black and white bag. Surveillance footage has been reviewed, and police are actively pursuing leads to apprehend the assailant. The incident follows an earlier robbery on the evening of June 3, 2025, around 9:43 p.m. at another Chinese supermarket in Trafalgar Village. A masked assailant described as a slim-built male wearing a black mask, black gloves, a maroon and black jacket, and brown pants entered the establishment and brandished a firearm. The suspect stole an undisclosed sum of money and merchandise before fleeing the scene. Fortunately, no injuries were reported in either of the robberies. As with the midday raid, police have reviewed surveillance footage and continue investigations to identify and apprehend the perpetrator. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force is appealing to the public for assistance in both cases. Residents and business owners with any information, no matter how small, are urged to come forward. Tips can be communicated to the nearest police station or directly to the Criminal Investigation Department (CID) via phone at 662-1140. The police force assures that all information provided will be handled with the strictest confidence. Acknowledging the recurring nature of such incidents, the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force has recommitted to educating retail businesses on effective robbery prevention strategies. In a shared community responsibility effort, they have issued comprehensive guidelines aimed at reducing the risk of robberies and safeguarding staff and assets. Key recommendations include minimizing cash on hand by retaining only enough for immediate transactions and depositing excess cash frequently, particularly during slower trading periods. The use of drop safes is also encouraged for enhanced security. Additionally, maximizing visibility within store is vital. This includes ensuring good lighting near registers and exits, keeping windows and doors clear of obstructions, and trimming surrounding shrubbery to remove potential hiding spots. Securing entrances and exits is another primary focus, with recommendations to keep back doors locked and alarmed, install buzzer systems during off hours when suitable, and ensure door locks are robust and well maintained. The installation of high-quality visible security cameras both inside and outside business premises is advised to cover all critical areas such as entrances, exits, sales floors, and cash registers. Businesses are reminded to regularly test their surveillance equipment to maintain clear and reliable recordings. Furthermore, staffing protocols stress the importance of having at least 2 employees present during opening and closing hours. Training staff on robbery prevention procedures, including recognizing and reporting suspicious behavior, is essential. The police force also emphasizes that in the event of a robbery, employee safety takes precedent over property, and that compliance with robbers is crucial to avoid harm. Effective communication within the business and with law enforcement is encouraged. Staff should be familiar with emergency contact procedures, and there should be clear guidelines for reporting suspicious activities. Building stronger connections within the business community by sharing information on suspicious individuals or incidents is also recommended, supporting collaborative vigilance. The police force reiterates that protecting people must always be the highest priority. If a robbery does occur, cooperate with the robber and prioritize personal safety over property. As investigations continue into the recent supermarket robberies, the community's cooperation and adherence to recommended safety measures are vital in helping law enforcement respond effectively and prevent further incidents. In regional news, senior police officer among 4 Guyanese sanctioned by U.S., News Source Guyana reports.
Tonight, the senior superintendent of police, Him Not Saw, is among 4 Guyanese that have been sanctioned by the U.S. government for their reported links to drug trafficking and the Colombian drug trafficking on the world. In a statement, the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control named the senior superintendent of police, Him Not Saw, along with businessman Paul Davy Jr., Mark Cromwell, also known as Demon of Buxton, and Randolph Duncan, also known as Rudolph Duncan, to its latest list of sanctioned individuals. The 4 are linked to 2 Colombian nationals who have also been sanctioned by the U.S. for drug trafficking and related crimes. According to the Office of Foreign Assets Control of the U.S. Treasury Department, for decades, Guyana has been a transshipment point for the movement of drugs from South America to the U.S. and Europe. The office said drug traffickers have been exploiting the rivers and jungles of South America by transiting large quantities of cocaine from Colombia and Venezuela through the waters of Guyana and Suriname. The statement further indicated that Guyana's proximity to the Caribbean, as well as reported corruption along its ports and borders, allowed maritime vessels, known as narco submarines, to transit through its waters undetected. The U.S. said drug traffickers utilized the vessels to smuggle cocaine from the ports of Guyana and Suriname across the Atlantic to the U.S., Europe, and the Caribbean. The report also noted that traffickers also coordinated the importation of cocaine loads from Colombia and Venezuela to Guyana via small aircraft, utilizing illegal airstrips in Guyana as landing spots. The U.S. government noted that cocaine has been discovered buried in underground bunkers located on airstrips and in jungle territory within Guyana's Barima-Waini region as a prominent location. Cocaine is then flown via aircraft to the U.S., Europe, and the Caribbean, the report noted. News source understands that the sanctioned persons have been investigated for several months by the U.S. authorities, and they were linked to a major drug bust that took place in the Barima-Waini region in September of last year, when more than 4.4 tons of cocaine was discovered stashed near an illegal airstrip in Region 1. During that operation, it was the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit that worked along with the Guyana Defense Force Special Forces and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency. The Guyana Police Force was left out of the operation, although it has a police base in the region. The commander of the base at that time was the same senior superintendent who has now been sanctioned by the U.S. government. Although there were concerns about his alleged ties to the cocaine discovery, he was never directly linked to the large haul. But he was removed from the area and reassigned to police headquarters. In a statement tonight, the Guyana Police Force said it has taken note of a report by the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control to sanction 4 Guyanese, including a senior superintendent of police, Him Not Saw. The police force said, in keeping with the Guyana Police Force's standard operating procedure, Senior Superintendent Saw has been sent on administrative leave following him being sanctioned for drug trafficking by the U.S. The police said Senior Superintendent Saw joined the police force on the 3rd of June 2008. His last posting was at the force's projects office. Businessman Paul Davy Jr. has long been on the radar of local and foreign drug investigators. His late father, Paul Davy Sr., was also under the eyes of U.S. drug investigators for his alleged ties to the narco trade. He passed away a few years ago during the COVID-19 pandemic and had been flown to Colombia on a private jet for treatment, but still died after contracting the virus. Buxtonian Mark Cromwell has also been linked locally to drug trafficking previously. He is a former policeman turned businessman, and last year a wanted bulletin was issued for his arrest in connection with a kidnapping probe. He has also been known to be closely linked to a number of persons in the present government and has been spotted in public settings with some of them. The U.S. government has been paying close attention to Guyana and the growing drug trade over the years, with Region 1 with its porous borders being used as a main transshipment point.
World Environment Day observed with a cleanup campaign in Grenada. Grenada Broadcasting Network has that story.
We are delighted to be here for World Environment Day 2025 to beat plastic pollution and put an end to plastic pollution.
Aria St. Louis, head of the Environment Division in the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy. On Thursday, Grenada joined over 190 nations in observing World Environment Day under the theme, Our Power, Our Planet, highlighting the fact that everyone from government and corporations to individuals and communities has a role. To commemorate the occasion, the Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority, in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy, conducted a cleanup drive on Wednesday behind the St. George's Bus Terminal and the Gulf Beachfront in St. John. St. Louis said this week they will be visiting schools to raise awareness on how to end plastic pollution, its scourge, and how it has impacted biodiversity in the natural marine environment.
Today, rather than stay inside the ministry, the opportunity was presented for us to get out ourselves and put our money where our mouth is and say that we are coming out instead of saying and suggesting to others to clean, to get out and clean. So as a group, we came out. We had planned to clean around the Lance Bridge and leading up along the riparian part of the river, which is what we did. And then we came across to the bus terminal, which is a well-known area. And in partnership with our wonderful colleagues from Solid Waste Management, the ministry and Solid Waste Management together have done this cleaning activity today. We hope that this will inspire, spur, and lead to other groups who may have lagged over time or who may now be starting up to think about ways that they can contribute to environmental stewardship and responsibility.
World Environment Day is a time when the global community gets together to recognize how important the environment is as part of sustainable development. St. Louis extended an invitation to an event the entire family can learn from and enjoy.
We invite you over the weekend to join us in Quarantine Point, where on Saturday and Sunday we will culminate with a series of local documentaries looking at the very Grenada wren that has been identified as our newest species, looking at leatherback turtles, as well as international documentaries. It starts at around 6:30, 6:45 p.m. with the children's program, and then we move into the adult program. It's totally free for you to join. We had it last weekend and we are having it this weekend.
World Environment Day is celebrated annually on the 5th of June and encourages awareness and action for the protection of the environment. It is supported by many non-governmental organizations, businesses, government entities, and represents the primary United Nations Outreach Day supporting the environment. Christina John, GBN News.
We now bring you these international reports.
The very public feud between Donald Trump and Elon Musk exploded on social media, both men trading insults. Well, while a call might have been in prospect, the White House now reports that there are no plans for the US president to talk to Elon Musk. There had been some speculation of that, but the White House pushing back against that. The wider question now is what this whole rift might mean for President Trump's political future direction and indeed the global economy. Elon Musk has predicted a recession in the second half of this year thanks to President Trump's tariffs, and he's criticised one of President Trump's key domestic policies, which the US president did not appreciate.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem.
Well, that was Donald Trump speaking, and just minutes later Elon Musk replied on X saying this was false and that the bill had never been shown to him. On Truth Social, President Trump then said Elon Musk was wearing thin and that he'd asked him to leave. The president continued saying he'd taken away the EV mandate, that Mr. Musk had gone crazy. Mr. Musk replied, calling this an obvious lie. Over the course of the day, the back and forth between the two men continued. Elon Musk's father has told the BBC now that the row between his son and President Trump would fizzle out. Here's Errol Musk speaking to Newsday.
What I see here is, the field having been cleared of all the opposition. It's the bulls having their final round of seeing who's going to be the boss. It's a standard procedure for the last several thousand years among the leaders of countries, and it will fizzle out. It blew up over Elon's idea that there should be no form of payment to lawmakers in order to get their vote. They should not be bribed to get the vote, and so forth. So, unfortunately, in order to get the votes that Trump needs to get the bill through, he has to have their votes. So Elon is standing on principle, and it will fizzle out very soon.
Well, a short time ago, I spoke to Laura Weiss, a reporter for Punchbowl News, and Peter Morisi, economist and business professor at the University of Maryland and columnist for the Washington Times. I started by asking Laura if she thought this row would blow over.
So I think it just underscores how quickly things can change in President Trump's orbit. Elon Musk was such a central part of the administration until his departure so recently. His work on Doge, finding cuts and absolutely, huge reductions in the federal government. That's been a huge part of the narrative with the Trump administration, and he's led that really vocally. Obviously, everything spilled out so publicly over the last, 24, 48 hours, and now it absolutely could be settled, but that's yet to be seen. We'll kind of see how those conversations go. But it was an absolutely huge kind of turn of favor, especially, Republicans on Capitol Hill. They've grown close to Musk as well and brought him in repeatedly. And so it would be this sort of rift is a huge situation for Republicans.
And Peter Morisi, we saw in one of Elon Musk's posts yesterday him predicting a recession, and he's been critical of the tariff policy, which has had huge global impacts.
Well, the tariffs, as near as economists can calculate it, will cause the economy to slow. But whether or not there'll be a recession is questionable. The macroeconomic consequences of this should be to cut the expected growth in the U.S. economy this year in half, but for it not to contract. Now, those kinds of forecasts are, iffy, and Musk is going out on a limb saying things like that. The reality is that Musk is correct, as his father said, on the principles. The tax bill has a lot of pork in it, as we say here, and waste, and it's ballooning the deficit to the point that bond markets internationally are very worried about U.S. finances and so forth. And the tariffs really are being conducted in an irrational fashion, and he's quite exasperated by what he sees. But he's used to getting his way and blustering around just the way Donald Trump is. So you've got two big bulls, behaving badly. Unfortunately for Mr. Musk, Donald Trump's simply a more powerful man right now.
And Laura, at the end of the day, that is the fact, isn't it? The US president is still the US president. Do you think his policy on tariffs and his so-called big beautiful bill will change in any way as a result of Musk's departure from the administration?
I don't think it's likely that those policies change because of Musk's, criticism here or what he's kind of putting out there. I mean, I think the risk with Musk talking about the deficit impact of this bill, I think the bigger problem right now is you're seeing on Capitol Hill, this bill has tax cuts, it has immigration policies, funding for border security, the sort of crackdowns that the administration is doing. And it also has massive spending cuts to federal spending. And so, that's something where some of the conservative hardliners on Capitol Hill have wanted more federal spending cuts in this bill. If they start to get antsy with where the bill is at, that's really a bigger problem for President Trump as he's trying to get his agenda done very quickly here. The goal of getting it done by July 4th, which is coming up fast. But, I think Republicans' response, I was on Capitol Hill yesterday talking to them, this is the agenda and this is President Trump's party. None of that really was changing, but I think Republicans were disappointed to see this from Musk. He's become a very influential figure in Republican politics. He spent a lot of money to elect Trump and Republicans in Congress. And so, they're not happy to see him fighting with Trump so directly, certainly. But I don't think that it is going to tangibly change, for example, the bill that's working its way through Capitol Hill right now.
Peter Morisi, do you agree with that? Because obviously Musk also had people that he appointed within government. One wonders where those people will fit in unrolling both sort of global and domestic economic and financial directions now.
The people that he has placed into the government are not in locations or in positions where they'll have much influence on the things that we have been discussing, namely the contents of the tax bill, which do increase the deficit and so forth. The reality is that Musk's influence is declining, even before this blow-up. His money is only worth so much. And if you give to a campaign, you have a lot of influence at the time you're given. Once the money's spent, it's spent. He has indicated that he won't be contributing as much in the future and so forth. I don't expect that he's going to have much consequence on this bill and that he's going to have much influence. This is kind of his swan song.
When farmer Sikuru Mwarugamba returned to the 5 acres where she grows beans and cassava, she found stunted shoots and tubers rotting in waterlogged soil. She, like other farmers, had been forced to abandon their planting season and flee from fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo's Kabare territory. Since January, the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel groups have seized large swathes of territory, including Eastern Congo's 2 biggest cities, Goma and Bukavu. Their advance has reopened major roads once choked by militia checkpoints, but left rural areas vulnerable to banditry and sporadic clashes, displacing thousands and disrupting livelihoods.
During this period of war, the beans we had planted, when we fled the war, we abandoned everything. We left with the remaining seeds we were supposed to plant, but we ate them where we fled to. Upon our return, we found that what we had planted was spoiled because we hadn't done the weeding, and the rats ate what was left in the field. That's why we won't have seeds for this year.
The combination of armed occupation and insecurity has brought food production to a standstill. Without safe access to their land, families cannot plant or harvest, pushing up prices in Bukavu's markets. Traders report the price of a measure of beans rising from 4,000 to 5,000 Congolese francs. As merchants turn to supplies from Goma to fill the gaps left by failed harvests around Kabare. Herman Mutabataba, director of a Bukavu seed company, warns the disruption could herald months of hunger.
Most producers usually kept part of their harvest as seeds for the next season. But in this situation, since they haven't harvested, they couldn't save seeds. The war, which was already a security situation, has become a source of food insecurity.
Aid agencies and both rebel and government authorities now face the urgent task of securing farming areas, restoring access to markets, and preventing South Kivu's ruined fields from tipping the region towards famine.
U.S. job growth cooled in May amid uncertainty about President Trump's tariffs, according to a closely watched report out Friday from the Labor Department. Non-farm payrolls increased by 139,000 in May, more than economists had expected, but reflecting ebbing momentum from the prior months. That was underscored by sharp downward revisions to both March and April's job gains. The unemployment rate held steady at 4.2% for the third consecutive month because more than 600,000 people dropped out of the labor force, suggesting a lack of confidence in the job market. Economists say Trump's flip-flopping on import tariffs has hampered businesses' ability to plan ahead and hire more workers. Opposition to Trump's tax cut and spending bill from conservative Republicans in the U.S. Senate and tech billionaire Elon Musk has added another layer of uncertainty for companies. Still, the report did have a silver lining as average hourly earnings increased 0.4%, double April's amount. Solid wage growth should keep U.S. economic expansion on track and could lead the Federal Reserve to delay further cuts in interest rates. U.S. stocks opened higher after the report's release.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
device distribution rolled out in Nevis to complement upcoming launch of digital literacy program.
Police investigating shooting of Calvin Prentice.
Electric vehicle policy for St. Kitts and Nevis begins to take shape.
St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister defends sale of Christophe Harbour Marina to Safe Harbour Marinas, setting sights on Caribbean yachting supremacy. Police investigate 2 separate robberies at Chinese supermarkets. Senior police officer among 4 Guyanese sanctioned by U.S. World Environment Day observed with a cleanup campaign in Grenada. Internationally, Donald Trump has no plans to talk to Elon Musk, White House says.
Thank you for listening.